Welcome, everyone, and thanks for being here today. I am Julia, the Music Community Manager at Pixabay, and today we're joined by Spencer Alfonso from Ildefonso Inc., a full service production agency specializing in professional music for media. Some of you may remember Spencer from the Music Sync webinar that we did last year. And today he's back, and this time he's pulling back the curtain on a production session he's been working on. We're going to cover some really practical ground today. We'll dig into what actually changes when you decide to create an album for Sync versus a regular artist release. Spencer will walk us through how he defines the sound and vibe before a single note gets written, how he thinks about lyrics through a sync lens, and the rules he follows there. And finally, the key production decisions he makes when he's building a track with placement in mind, without losing his authenticity for the genre, mostly rock and pop. It's gonna be a great session. Spencer, welcome back. The floor is yours.
Yeah, my name is Spencer, and I am a music producer and songwriter. And yeah, this is my session. So we're going to use this to try to break down how I think about sync. And I've taken some notes to kind of walk us through. I've been producing music since really like 2011. And yeah, I really like to break down sessions, so I think this will be a fun one. And hopefully it makes sense and is useful and helpful.
I'm sure it will be perfect. So, what do we have here?
All right. So I would say whenever I'm talking to songwriters who are interested in like breaking into the entertainment industry, if it's, really most genres, there's very few genres where this wouldn't apply, but the vocal is the glue. So when I work with songwriters, we're thinking about the performance as much as we are the writing. So it's like they go hand in hand. So the more that you write with someone, the more you could help guide their performance to sound the way that you guys want it to sound coming out of the speaker. So in this case, this is a project that we have that's mostly not out yet, but it's with my friend Pearl Bots, and the project is called Kalena, and we in order to get to this point, we had been working together for a really long time, co-writing, getting her featured on tracks, and kind of building a language between the two of us to make it so her vocal could be the glue of the production that I was putting underneath her vocal. So if you're going to work with someone, whether it's your own voice or another person, I would say the vocal is the glue. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's play the verse real quick, and hopefully the audio is okay. We're still trying to work out the kinks. It might be being compressed by Zoom, but I'll try to give you guys a quick example. Okay, so we hear that vocal in the verse. That's kind of what we spent a lot of time building from a vocal production standpoint, is how her voice could cut through a really big track in terms of like loud drums, synths, bass, and also be bright enough to be bright enough to cut through, but still have that thick kind of texture quality that I call as gluey, meaning like the compressor is keeping it forward, it's adding texture and grit to it.
Mhm.
And I think that keeps your listeners attuned to what the lyrics are, but it also keeps it from becoming too much of like a karaoke track, which I describe as something where the vocal's really loud and the music's really quiet, and those
Yeah.
two worlds feel totally separate. So the reason why you want that vocal to be really strong is if you have a song in a television show or an ad or a movie, usually the character of the movie or the TV show or the ad is doing an action that the singer is adding narrative to. So
Mhm.
if this were to be placed in a TV show, it would be most likely like a montage, or it'd be a moment where a character is having a high action moment, or it could be like a song that's playing in a bar in the background while people are talking. But either way, the vocal has to sit in a place where you could hear it, but it's not so loud that everyone watching the show or everyone watching the ad or the movie, whatever it is, that they're like, oh wait, is one of the characters in the TV show singing? Like it needs to be clear that
Yeah.
it's this is a fully produced track that's being played in in the in the other media that is being synced in. So
Yeah.
you need to find that balance, and I describe that balance as being like kick, snare, and vocal. Like if you could have those three things kind of interacting with each other, then you have
Hmm.
a really good vocal glue that could keep the track moving, but it's not sitting so above those things that it becomes disjointed. And
Okay.
that pushes us into my other note, which is the rhythm section is the engine. So for my style of production, I am very drum focused and
Mm.
percussion focused. So I'll show you what the bass and the drums are doing in that verse section. And you can hear that I'm going for a lot of syncopation and energy in the claps. And the reason why is I want the vocal to interact with the percussion. So it's creating like subdivisions essentially. So
Perfect.
check this out what the drums are doing in that next section to kind of add excitement and energy.
Perfect.
So we'll kind of break it down. So creating the rhythm section as the engine, especially in pop, which is what I would consider this like alternative pop maybe. But so kick. So if you notice the hi-hat's doing this, and that is kind of emphasizing what the vocal is doing. Because the vocal during the verse is going da 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 da, and so the hi-hat's doing the same thing.
Yeah. It's like a very melodic, rhythmic
Right.
production on hi-hat. That's really nice.
So then you have your claps. So then you add in the hi-hat and then the snare.
Yeah. So groovy, yeah?
So if you notice, the kick is kind of doing more than a kick would normally do.
Yeah.
So that is to create that movement that we're talking about where you need the engine. So uh, that is what I think makes a music producer stand out if you're looking to break into the entertainment industry. It's like
Mhm.
the moment you can create excitement and energy with the percussion and the drums and the bass, then you now have the building block to put your really cool melody and your really cool chords over. But if the drums don't hit hard enough, then music supervisors tend to tune it out, And now there's a whole other genre of folk and indie and songwriter that maybe doesn't require as much percussion and drum
Mhm.
knowledge, but in terms of like pop and rock and hip hop, you really have to have the drums doing something simple enough, but they need to like be a really core element of the
Yeah.
production because that is what moves the plot forward in, your TV show or whatever moment, whatever scene it is that it's going to be used in. Uh,
Hmm.
so
Totally.
next up, we have sound effects create texture. So I love sound effects in pop, and I try to do the same thing in rock. It's just different tools. In rock, I would use maybe like a synthesizer, or I would use a guitar pedal, or I'd use again percussion, but maybe with some weird effects to create those
Mhm.
sound effects. For this, you'll probably hear a blend of like Pearl doing stuff over the samples. So here's what that sounds like. So that creates the texture. So as those
Yeah.
reverbs are happening, they're allowing the drums to stay drier. So think of those sound effects as your cymbals and
Mhm.
your dynamics that a real drummer would have when you're producing pop that has a lot of sample-based percussion. You need to find ways to open up the sonic spectrum, And sometimes you don't want cymbals all the time, like big, loud crash cymbals. So the vocal textures and the sound effects with long reverb tails kind of creates dimension to your production.
Mm-hmm.
Then, um, thinking about how stuff translates on small speakers. So, I have just some consumer grade Bose speakers that I love. They're like $150. I could switch at any time to those speakers and put those in mono and
Mm.
listen to what I'm producing in smaller speakers. They're like this big compared to the studio monitors, which are like this big.
Yeah.
And so that allows you to kind of hear what will it sound like. And then I have a mono Bluetooth speaker that I listen to that's loud, but it's just mono
Uh,
and it's always mono. And so I'll listen back through that as well to kind of hear again, well, what will it sound like in different settings? So that way, if it does get on TV or it ends up on social media or whatever, you kind of already have a good idea of how it's translating. And if you need to EQ things a little differently, because often what will happen is if you are not thinking about the smaller speakers, all your low frequencies won't be something that people catch on the small speaker. So you'll just
yeah.
hear vocals. And then when you just have those vocals so exposed in a small speaker, like a television speaker or an iPhone speaker, it sounds like the production is really small. So you might have all this cool, exciting stuff happening in the big speakers, but when it translates to the small speakers, it all disappears. So that's something to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And then the arrangement should be digestible right away, meaning you want people to have a frame of reference for what they're listening to. You also want to surprise them. But ultimately, if it's doing too many things, then it's kind of like overwhelming and understimulating at the same time. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on? So the goal is that they can hear it and go, oh, I feel like I know what this song is trying to say to me. Because you might be dropped into a scene where it's real quick and they're going to pick the track that conveys that energy, that emotion right away. So if it's a bank heist, the track needs to sound dangerous. If it's a car ride, it needs to feel like it has momentum. If it's
Mm-hmm.
a beach scene, it needs to convey all of those emotions. And I believe my approach is always like you should also be able to picture that song on the radio because like if it goes on the radio, it needs to have a certain level of energy and excitement to it.
Yeah.
And so whether it's a beach song or it's a car ride or a bank heist or a sports scene, a lot of those songs that end up getting placed also live on the radio. So even if you're not going to end up on the radio, you want to
True.
make sure that your song could be a single that lands on the radio because that's what the music supervisors are going to be listening to. So like, if they're going to hear this song, they might compare it to other artists that they're considering syncing who have a big radio song, and that the production quality and the level of excitement and energy needs to match what their other options are. So yours isn't suddenly much more quieter or it's a little duller. It doesn't have quite the same like polish that, the other tracks that they're considering using have.
True.
Um, Types of tracks that sing often tend to have bold vocals, but ultimately you want that driving feeling. So that's just kind of summarizing vocal is the glue, rhythm section. And then we've already touched on avoiding a karaoke style track, which is where
Yeah.
vocals really loud and everything else is really quiet.
Yeah.
You want to write the lyrics so that the singer can perform those lyrics with a lot of confidence. So often as we're recording, we'll tweak the lyrics because we'll be like, well, that note sounds kind of funky because of the word. It's forcing your
Mm.
voice to do something unnatural. And we want to
Yeah.
change that word rather than spending all this time trying to make that awkward word fit. Let's just fix the word and then unlock the vocal performance. And then the last 20% takes a song over the edge.
Uh,
Um, for me, the last 20%, I'm looking at every section. I'm listening it to on the Bluetooth speaker while I'm doing other things, and then I'll be like, "Oh, that third chorus is missing something." Or I'll add that last 20%. Oh, wait, I forgot to EQ the vocal effects, and then I'll EQ those, create more depth. Oh, I want to listen to it one more time in mono and make sure all those little changes you make, that's what pushes a song over the edge.
mhm.
Um, and then the mix matters. So if you're not a mixing engineer or you haven't gotten started, but you're a great songwriter, I would work with a music producer or a mixing engineer who can help
Mm.
guide you through that process to make sure that the end product sounds commercial in the sense that like a music supervisor is going to listen to it with 100 other songs, and your song is not going to be the obviously unprofessional mix,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, if the track is too safe, I often get this, people will listen to reference tracks too much and then
Mhm.
lose their own identity in the process. And so typically, I don't recommend working on a pitch brief if
Okay.
you don't have a project that really fits that, or you're not trying to meet other people. Pitch briefs for sync are really good if you have a new writer that you want to work with and you both are excited to kind of like try something. You have a neutral pitch brief that's like, oh, we need a song that fits this, ad. It's a car driving in the desert. We need something like Rolling Stones,
Yeah.
whatever this song. And then you go, oh, well, we've been wanting to write together for a while. Let's use that as like a song idea. And
Yeah.
then the goal to me always is to create a project together where you're consistently meeting every week. And that's what I've found lately is if you're not in the room with the person and you're not meeting constantly and really intertwining your workflows, it's really hard to go up against people who are.
Yeah.
If you're like, I write with someone once every 6 months and we get on Zoom and we like, kind of sketch an idea and then walk away from it, that's gonna be less fruitful than every week my friend comes over at the same time and we write together. We produce stuff. We have an EP coming out. We have a single coming out. We're shooting a music video. Those are the artists that music supervisors get excited about working with because they see that same level of passion and commitment that the music supervisor is having to their project or the director or the film producer. So
Right.
you want to build a home base where you could create with people. It's very rare that you could do everything yourself. Maybe sometimes that happens, but even if that's the case, if it's going to do well, you're going to have an A&R person. You're going to have people that are helping pitch your music. So it's always going to be a team process,
Yeah.
no matter what. So it's best to get to know that team consistently.
Mhm.
But yeah, those are my notes on writing for Sync or producing for Sync. Is there anything else that you feel like I missed that you want to talk about or go deeper in?
Yeah, I don't think you missed anything. I think this is very solid advice and straight to the point and very professional. And I really like how you mapped it out and how everything kind of um, affects the other things. So, for example, it's very important that the vocals are not usually typical as in pop songs in radio that you want them to be here and you want people to sing it out loud and be like karaoke. We want to avoid that when we're thinking about music production for sync placements. We want to fully avoid that and maybe put more emphasis on drums and still use vocal as the glue, as you said. And I think this is a very important tip that I had never heard before. And I think this is like a secret maybe on the industry because it's true that you want the song to add a detail of like you want the song to be part of the storytelling of a scene. Maybe it's for an ad or maybe it's for a film or TV series, whatever. But you want that not to be the main character because you are adding more
Yeah, I would
storytelling to the whole story. Yeah.
I would say like if you listen to a lot of rock music, you'll notice that I would say Nine Inch Nails is a great example where
Yeah.
the Strokes, where those bands you'll hear the vocal, but it is kind of affected to the point where it feels like an instrument. And I
Mhm.
think that is where I take a lot of that. Some vocalists will naturally have such character to their voice that they already sound like an instrument. And
Yeah.
it's like you could turn them up or down, maybe like Alabama Shakes. Like you could turn her
Yeah.
voice up or down, and it's going to get placed on the radio. It's going to be used everywhere because it's so interesting. But if you have a more
Mhm.
traditional vocalist who maybe has a pure vocal tone, then you want to help that vocalist become a part of the music. And so it's a case to case basis, but I would err towards making sure that the vocal is glued in with the track. Because especially if they're like, you know, come with a more traditional singing background where they're like singing long notes with vibrato and all that stuff. You want to trim that down and help focus that into the percussion, into the drums and all of that. So it's a
Yeah.
vocal production technique that I've found. helps create tracks that are more surprising while also making them something that people can imagine visuals to because it's more of a character, it's more of a effect. It sounds a little bit different than maybe what, you know, your friend who's just songwriting is thinking, when they're writing a
Yeah.
song.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to ask you is there's at least from my point of view, it's a little bit of a challenge because when you're producing music for sync, you don't have per se a project or a demand on this will have to be placed on this type of scene or advertisement or whatever. So sometimes my question is, are you always starting from scratch without like a clear outcome of what the album that you're producing, for example, will have to be placed on? Are you choosing that? Like, are you imagining, okay, I want to create something that sounds like the Strokes or these other artists, and I think this will have good placements because there's a demand for this, and I'm gonna use these guitars or I'm gonna try to create this sound. And like, do you have all these strategic decisions firsthand, or do you wait for someone to say, "Hey, we need something that sounds like this. Do you have it?" And if you say, "No, I don't, but I'm gonna work on it," and then you, I don't know, work on it for 2 months, and then like how does that work?
I think genre really helps kind of decide what you're gonna do with your career. So if you're in the rock genre, I think authenticity matters, meaning you have a singer, you want to like find as much uniqueness to that singer as you can, and then support the singer with a great mix and a great arrangement. But really, the singer is going to decide where all that's going. And then if you have pop, I would say energy, quality, consistency matters a little bit more than individuality. Like pop, there's more of an expectation of what pop is going to sound like. It's kind of like
Yeah,
uh, it needs to be melodic, it needs to be hooky, it needs to have, really present drums, and it needs to sound like the moment. Whereas rock, to me, this is how I view it. Rock needs to surprise and be kind of more bleeding edge of surprise. Oh, it's harder to break through as a rock artist because rock has been around for so long that to make something truly unique is really difficult. So for me,
yeah,
when I do rock, I think of it as more like you're a baker and yeah, you're making sourdough like everyone else, or you're making fresh pasta like everyone else, but yours really does need to taste really unique and really, even if it's just a difference of how much salt you put versus this. But
yeah,
the end goal is that it tastes like sourdough, but people are like, whoa, I didn't expect that at all. Like I didn't think you would combine all these things. Whereas pop, it needs to sound like a really catchy song that people want to keep listening to, that people are like, wow, this is fresh. This is like
yeah,
exciting. And they're not necessarily going to penalize you if they're like, oh, I've heard that drum beat before, but they will penalize you if it doesn't sound fresh and fun. Like if it doesn't like make them smile or make them want to dance or make them be active, if it doesn't like move them, I call it like physics. Pop really has to have the physics of changing the way that your heartbeat is moving and changing the way that you feel. Like it has to do that. That's almost more important than how do we find the most unique way to do this track? It's more
yeah,
important that with pop, it has a physical reaction to people. And then rock to me is like more of an abstract painting where you have to find a way to say that lyric in a way that's interesting. You have to find a way to make that guitar sound really interesting, that drum sound where people go, how did you get that drum sound? Like, did you record
yeah.
those drums in a hallway? How did you get what guitar amp is? It's more asking the details of how you created it. And then pop is more like, how did you guys write that song? How does she sing like that? How
Yeah,
did you guys come up with that concept? How did you guys make that chorus so catchy? They're like different expectations.
that's
Um,
true.
so if you solve those problems, then the rest will kind of come, people the business people will sort it out. If you come up with a really great song that's super catchy, and the vocalist, everyone's like, who is that vocalist? Like, what is her life like? Is she like, where does she live? How did she come up with that phrase? Like, that's the goal with pop. And then they go, well, I have the perfect show. Like, this show is has a character that reminds me of this song. I could picture this character going to a club scene and this song being the big scene that they hear, you know?
Yeah.
With rock, it's more like, oh, that's a cool new rock band. I really like that. I want to put them in the bar in the background of the music while everyone's hanging out. And I want the audience to go, wait, who's that band? I've never heard that band before. Or, like, I have this really cool brand of jeans or denim or boots that are coming out, and I really want a fresh new artist that is super unique that everyone will be super excited to go see live, and get to know the mythology of that band. What are they like? Who are
Yeah.
they? So they're similar, but I think the end result is you want people to have a really um, like strong gut reaction to hearing the music, but it's just slightly different, and if you
Mhm.
know what where the vocalist sits, then you could kind of
Yeah.
find those expectations and figure out how do we draw out the emotional response from the listener, whether it's pop or rock. Like, how do we make it so the listener is going to go, who is that? And I know, like, if my family who hears my music all the time are like, I've been listening to that song over and over again, it's like, oh, okay, so we're starting to find out where that singer is going to exist in the spectrum of whether they're rock or pop or alternative. Like,
Yeah.
whatever it is, they have to be the hero of that genre that people are asking you questions about. Oh, how'd you meet them? Who are they? Their voice is really cool. You're trying to draw people in. Like an
Yeah.
actor, honestly, like an actor in a TV show. The moment you see the TV show, if there's a new actor, you're like, that person's going to be a star. Like, they have something about them. I immediately am interested in what they're doing. And that's
Yeah.
what you're helping to create when you're writing a song. Is you're creating almost like your television show for that singer to star in, and for everyone to be like, I love the atmosphere, I love the world, and I love the story, and
Yeah.
I love that actor.
So that will be, thank you so much, Spencer. It's great always to meet with you and learn from you. So I wish you all the best, all success, and hopefully see you again.
All right. Thank you so much. This was so fun. And yeah, I really appreciate you reaching out and making this happen.